I'm Dr. Carmen Morrison. I'm a psychologist, a brain coach, and one of the founders here at Alli.
Hi, I am Drew Morrison. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am also a coach and co-founder at Alli.
Who also just happens to be my handsome son.
Yep, and she happens to be my wonderful mother. So.
I know, I was waiting for that. Like, right, I was going to send it over to you. You weren't going to send it back.
Well, good genes, right? Yeah.
So today we wanted to talk to you about how to connect with your teenager. And so even as we're doing this, I'm having all these memories of you as a teenager and those moments when at 11 o'clock at night you'd come bouncing into my bedroom. I'm not a person who goes to bed late, early to bed. And Mom, you got to see this YouTube video. Mom, really, you got to see it. And so it kind of is a topic that we've talked about a lot. Yep. And one of the things that we hear a lot from parents is how hard it is, how painful it is when they feel like they just can't connect with their adolescent child. And so we thought it might be fun to talk about that just a little bit today to help you learn a little bit about what's happening in your teenager's brain, what your teenager's needing from you, so that you can feel a little bit more successful about that and actually have some fun with it in the process. So, Drew, what would you say are some of the important things about what an adolescent needs at that stage of development relationally from us as parents?
Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest things, and we talk about it a lot at Alli in particular, is security. Security in relationship, most specifically with their parents.
So what would that look like?
I think trust. Trust is a big one, right? Trusting and knowing what to expect. I think from their parents. I talked about...
So predictability,
right?
Okay.
Kind of boundaries is also kind of in that discussion as well I always think of boundaries kind of like a fence, a protective fence to protect, right?
So having boundaries with our teenager is a protective
rules,
thing.
For example, rules is a big one, and I also know that that's a really big one that is a discussion between teens, especially as they develop,
well,
that
it strikes
comes up
me
between them and their parents.
The kinds of things you're bringing up are the places where disconnection often happens.
Sure. Yep.
Because we put boundaries or expectations or rules, and then they don't follow them. And so now we as parents are oftentimes angry, but if we're honest about it, parents, right, it's anger, but underneath of the anger is a lot of fear. And we have this fear that our child's going to screw up, which means that I've screwed up, means that I'm a lousy parent, and it's going to be my fault. And
or they're going to fail, right? Or
and that's going to be my fault,
right.
And something's going to happen to them, and I will have failed to protect them or
Right.
prepare them. So I think fear triggers a lot. And when we are afraid, let me just talk about my brain thing for a minute. When our bodies and brains go into fear mode, it actually shuts down all of the circuitry for love. It's not that we don't love our kids. That's not what's happening. It's just that we can't be in fear and responding in a loving way at the same time. In the brain and the body, those are on-off switches. So fear is like a stress response and an anxiety response, and it just shuts down all of the ability to take perspective, to have empathy, to see the other person. So it's no wonder in those moments that you just kind of brought up, it's no wonder that disconnection leads both our kid and ourselves to just feel like we're on opposite ends of the planet and there's no way to meet in between.
Right. Absolutely.
So, I was thinking about it, like one of the things for connection, for that security to happen and for our kids to feel secure with us, even when something has happened that they don't like, which, let's be real,
happens
a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that never happened
Never,
for
ever.
you. You were always happy with all of my decisions.
Right.
But, if you believe that, and we have lots of free stuff for you, but one of the things that is so critical is that our adolescent can have a reaction or can violate a boundary and still know that they're not losing our love. They can still know that even even in that moment, especially in that moment, that we are still there for them, we still see them, that what they're feeling matters to us, that we don't see them less than or at fault for, or that we're putting what we're feeling on them as though they're to blame. All of those things are things that go into that place of security with our teen. And what happens, we talk a lot at Alli about how we shape each other's brains. So we know from neurology and neuroscience that in relationship, what I do shapes your brain, what you do shapes my brain. And so when we're able to maintain a position of, I'm going to hold this boundary because I think it's the loving thing for you, but I still love you. You can be angry with me. And I can remember saying to you specifically at times, you can hate me if you want, but I'm your mother and I love you and I will do what is best for you, even if you hate me for it. Right. That message is such a clear message that this is not against you, this is not about me, this is really thinking about your needs and wanting what is best for you. And it's okay if you're upset with me, I'm still going to do the right thing by you.
Yeah. Well, and as you've been talking, I had a memory actually come up of a time when I was driving the family vehicle, and I was coming home, and I didn't tell my parents this too much later, but the reason this all started was because I dropped a French fry, and I was going for a French fry while driving. It was a back road, so there was no cars around at that time, and it was a perfect point in the road, perfect enough movement for me that I hit a low sign, and it scraped the entire length of the car. Crunched the front a little bit and then scraped. I mean, I couldn't have done it better if I tried. I really don't think. But I think back to that often too, especially when talking about this topic, because of how you and my dad handled that. That I didn't feel like, I felt terrible about it. I felt horrible. I was not excited to tell you about it at all, obviously. But it was the way you guys handled it. It was not something that stuck in my brain as like I felt worse off for it. You both were really intentional about recognizing that I felt terrible about it, right?
You did.
I did. And you focused on the things that I needed to do to make it right, and not the fact that it had happened, because that wasn't going to change anything anyway, right? Wasn't going to unscratch the car, let me tell you.
So moments like those, which can be really hard because your kid's coming to you like, I'm not okay. We talk about the disconnected brain all the time, right? So I'm in alarm mode,
which I think, if I can jump in, that alarm mode that your teen can come and present you with, I think, can look very differently, right?
A lot of different ways.
Sometimes it can be anger, right? Mine was shame, right? Or
blaming
embarrassed,
others,
right?
Yours was
fear, right? So that
all
same brain place can come and look very differently on the outside.
Good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. So they come with that, and then we respond, right? We get reactive. How could you do that? For parents, it's always because we're afraid. Like, oh my goodness, they had a minor accident, but it could have been a major accident, and every parent dreads that phone call, right? That something has happened. So, in a car to their teenager. So those moments when those kinds of things happen, and that's a great example, are really huge opportunities for connection. And it's really important for us to understand what's happening in the adolescent brain developmentally. We tend to think that adolescents have a fully developed adult brain when they hit puberty. And the fact is that we now know that that males do not have a fully developed adult brain until 28, and females until 25. Females get there a little faster for whatever reason.
Yep.
And so what happens, and the part that's still developing, is the thinking part, the reasoning part, the judgment, the self-control. The emotion center, though, is fully online at puberty. And so we have, as an adolescent, we have this whole range of emotions and intense emotions fully fleshed out like an adult would, with not a whole lot of ability online and moment to moment to connect with that.
Yeah.
Which is why one day your kid's going to be so reasonable and mature and make such good decisions, and then 24 hours later they can do the stupidest thing. And you just look at them like, what happened to you?
Yep.
And sometimes even the teenager themselves is feeling like, what happened to me?
When I talk with people, like when I have parents that I'm talking with in Alli and whatnot, and we have that conversation, you know, I even reflect on my time as a teen. I don't know, you can speak for yourself too, where it's just like sometimes I felt like I did have like the best idea ever.
Right.
And there were times afterwards where I was like, I have no idea who thought that. That was bad.
Yeah, but in the moment you were 100%
Oh, in the moment it was just like, this makes so much sense. I don't understand why you're not getting on board with this.
Right.
But
And it's not your teenager's fault, right? That's just where their brains are at. It's how their brains are developing. And so one of the things as parents, if we want to be able to connect with our teens, is the first thing we have to understand is that it's not their fault. Right? That they can only do what they can do with where their brains are at. And that's going to be variable in this developmental phase. And the older teenagers through adolescence and young adulthood, the older that they get, the less variable that is, because it's starting to settle down. But right at puberty, I mean, it's a hot mess.
Right.
Like a hot mess. We know that. The whole smart part of our brains, this part up here on top, is just like this tangled mess of circuits.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it really is a mess.
Right. Well, what are you going to do, right? I mean,
But what you're going to do,
Yeah.
this is critical,
Yep.
is that and this is why that consistent, loving stance becomes so critical at this stage of development, is because whatever doesn't get used in the brain prunes it away. And so how does it know what to keep and what to prune? Well, if it's repeated a lot, it keeps it. It wires it in and makes that hardwired circuit. If it does not get repeated, then it just goes, that's not very important for life, so let's just let that go, and it prunes it away. So when you, as my teenager, have a lot of experiences of, and the experiences always come from the bad moments of scraped cars or fender benders or breaking up with somebody or breaking the rules, breaking curfew, whatever it is, those trigger moments for parents and teens. Every time that happens and you get a response of, I still see you, I still believe in you, yeah, we have to attend to what just happened, but I still love you, nothing has changed there, then what happens in the brain is it goes, wow, I've heard this now 24 times. That must be really important for life. I'm going to wire that in. And so now when I get into my own adult relationships and I get into a marriage, I'm going to have this hardwired sense that things can happen between us, but we're still going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that creates security down the road. So one of the huge things for connecting with our kids is understanding what's happening in their brain.
Yep.
The other thing that I think about is, we call it attunement. How would you describe that? How would you break that down to make like attunement something that we could understand in parenting adolescents?
Yeah, well, I think back to a term that Dan Siegel, I believe, has said, which is feeling felt.
Yes.
By somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And that phrase has always really resonated with me, because I think that a lot of us know when that happens, right? Like, we know when someone has come and sat beside us and has understood us and has been with us in what we were feeling, right?
Yeah.
That's feeling felt. And so even I think in the moments like with the car for me, or those moments where there's just a lot going on in the brain, like we know and we can feel those moments where we feel like our parents are coming to us, or we go to our child, right? And you correctly and successfully sit with them and what they're feeling. I think it goes back to what you're saying too a little bit, right? Is that I, as a parent, am doing this because I love you, even though it's going to be hard, right? It might be hard, but it's just that I love you and I understand what you're feeling at the same time, right? It's holding a lot of different things, but with that overarching message of I'm here with you, no matter what.
Yeah, that with you thing is so critical. When I think of attunement, I think of tuning into. And so often as parents, we get drawn to the behaviors first, like what did you do or what didn't you do for the 50th time, or I've told you 100 times,
know
blah,
better.
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You know better. You
Yep.
how could you do this?
Yep.
That's just sort of this, when we're triggered, that's a place that we tend to go. And what we miss in those moments are those opportunities for connection, where we want to feel and tune into what our child is feeling first, before correcting the behavior or even addressing the circumstance and what happened.
Right.
Is what's going on for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that connection first, so that I tune in, and connection is all about emotion. So in that example of the car, which is just such a perfect one, it was obvious that you felt terrible, and knowing you as my kid, I know how tenderhearted you are about those things, how much you hate disappointing anybody, right? And so, and it was all over your face, it was in your body language. And so responding first to that, right, that you're okay. It's just a car. It's just a scrape. It's not a reflection of you. It doesn't define you. It's just a thing. What's most important, and I'm sure we said this to you, is that you're okay. And so that's tuning in first to what your kid is feeling underneath the anger, underneath the fear, underneath the defensiveness, underneath the blaming, reactivity, or whatever it might be in the moment. What is going on for them? That's our first task in connection. And then we deal with what happened after the connection is secure.
Right.
So I think those are the two big things that, for me, is understanding what's happening in your kid's brain and working with that. And then secondly, understanding that the importance of tuning in to what our kid is feeling first before dealing with what they're doing or not doing. And having it in that order is really transformational for having that connected relationship with our kid.
But I think you know, the last part that I think is important for parents to think about too is that oftentimes you can think that it's the teen that needs to do the work, right? And I think it's a hard shift to have to make that. As your teen is going to be building skills, right, and working through something too, so too you as a parent also, right? You're talking about basically taking kind of I think of it as like a brain first perspective, and then you address the other things that need to be addressed. But that's hard to make a shift, right? Especially as a parent, you're coming into being a parent from any number of places, right? So that's hard. And so to, I think, have the expectation, or even just to know that you're going to be building a habit too, right? Just like your teen is building skills and navigating things, you as a parent have the opportunity to do that and have a really big impact by doing that.
What that makes me think of is the importance, and we can do a whole other video on this, but the importance of having places of support for ourselves as a parent, ideally with our spouse or our partner, or the other parents, so that when things happen that trigger us and we're struggling to have that control, we're struggling to control ourselves enough to even be able to tune into our kid, that we have a place to go for support, somebody who can help regulate us. We talk about regulation a lot here at Alli. That just means soothing our brains so that we can have our whole selves available to us. So having somebody to support us, not expecting our kid to do that, having our own adult relationship that helps us do that, so that we can do that for our kid and help their brains wire in a way that sets them up for healthy relationships for life. So we would love to give you some supporting materials. So check out the links below. We have a lot of learning modules where we coach you through doing this connection with your adolescent, and also some for younger children as well. So check out those links below. Be sure to like us and subscribe, and we will see you on another video where we talk about how you can deal with stuck moments and find ways to get unstuck by working with your brain instead of against it. We'll see you then.